There is a kind of woman who doesn't chase noise. She listens for truth, who doesn't wear intelligence like jewelry. It lives in her breath, in her pauses, in the sharp stillness between her choices. You may walk by her in a crowd and not even know you've just passed an entire revolution in a single body. And if you're here tonight, it means you know there's a power buried deep in grace, in restraint, in wisdom not thrown, but wielded. This isn't about surface-level brilliance or clever sound bites. This is about the internal architecture of a mind sharpened by solitude, shaped by discernment, and unbothered by the world's applause. Stay with me, because what we're going to unravel isn't just a list of habits. It's the blueprint of a woman who becomes the quiet storm, a woman whose presence realigns the room, a woman who knows. And if you want to become her or recognize her in yourself, don't just listen to this speech. Let it change the way you walk back into your life. She values her energy like currency because she has learned, often through the ache of experience, that time can be stolen and energy can be drained, but both are hers to protect. You will not find her giving herself away for the sake of being liked. She is not interested in being everywhere, pleasing everyone, or saying yes when her soul means no. Her presence is selective, intentional, and sovereign. When she shows up, she means it. And when she doesn't, believe that there was wisdom behind her absence. In a world that celebrates busyness and noise, she dares to live slower, clearer, and deeper. She doesn't subscribe to the belief that exhaustion equals importance. She's not flattered by being overwhelmed. She understands that being constantly accessible is not a virtue, it's a leak. So she audits her energy the same way others audit their bank accounts. She doesn't just look at where her hours went, she reflects on how they made her feel. Did that conversation feed her spirit or drain her soul? Did that environment expand her or shrink her? She asks, then adjusts, always. People may call her distant or unavailable, but what they really mean is she no longer bends. She no longer depletes herself to hold up what was never meant to be hers. She once gave too much, once said yes when her heart whispered no, once ran on empty trying to keep others full. But no more. Her energy is now sacred ground. You don't just enter, you are invited. She guards her peace like a gatekeeper. She recognizes that her mental clarity, emotional balance, and spiritual alignment are not optional. They are non-negotiable. She knows that saying no is a complete sentence, not an apology. And so she doesn't explain her boundaries, she embodies them. She lets people adjust or exit, but never compromises her alignment to keep someone from leaving. If someone's presence costs her her peace, she chooses peace. Every time. You see, her energy is not just for survival, it's for creation, it's for building, it's for dreaming. She understands that being constantly reactive keeps her from being powerfully creative, that being everything to everyone keeps her from being something real to herself. She is not here to prove her worth through overfunctioning. She is here to live, to feel, to grow, to contribute from overflow, not depletion. This woman has learned the subtle difference between helping and overextending, between supporting and self-sacrificing. She no longer confuses loyalty with self-betrayal. She will love you deeply, but not at the cost of abandoning herself. She's no longer interested in shrinking her own needs just to make others feel more comfortable. That is a currency too expensive to spend. When she feels her energy shift, she doesn't ignore it. She pays attention. She listens to the body tightening, the spirit sighing, the mind growing heavy. She does not shame herself for being tired. She honors her fatigue like a warning light. She steps back, recalibrates, restores, because she knows when she is well, everything she touches flourishes. But when she is drained, nothing blooms, not even her. So she takes her rest seriously. She protects her solitude fiercely. She doesn't feel guilty for needing space. She knows that solitude is not loneliness, it's maintenance. It's where she hears herself again. It's where she detoxes from everyone else's noise so she can remember her own voice. And from that place, she returns, not as a woman begging for validation, but as one who has refilled herself with truth. She's strategic about her surroundings, too. You will not see her in rooms that feel wrong, even if they're prestigious. She doesn't mistake status for substance. She chooses environments that nourish her, not just impress others. She understands that her energy cannot thrive where her spirit feels suffocated. So she walks away from toxic energy, passive aggression, and veiled jealousy, even when it's disguised as closeness. This woman lives by an inner compass. She doesn't need to be told what's worth her time. She feels it. If a connection doesn't feel reciprocal, she steps back. If a project doesn't light her up, she releases it. She is not seduced by quantity. She is loyal to quality. A few rich connections, a few hours of quiet joy, a few people who speak her language without noise. That is wealth to her. That is power. Because the truth is, her energy is her offering. Her presence is her gift. Her attention, her laughter, her ideas, her comfort, none of it is casual. All of it is currency. And if you're fortunate enough to receive it, you'd better treat it with the same reverence she's learned to give herself. Not because she's arrogant, but because she's awake. She has watched people spend themselves into spiritual bankruptcy, and she has chosen a different fate. She would rather be misunderstood for honoring herself than be exhausted from pleasing others. She would rather be alone in alignment than surrounded in self-abandonment. And most of all, she knows that every time she protects her energy, she protects her becoming, the woman she's still unfolding into. And that woman, she's not for sale. She listens more than she speaks, not because she lacks something to say, but because she understands that words carry weight, and silence often carries more. In a world obsessed with being heard, she has mastered the rare art of hearing. She doesn't interrupt, overtalk, or perform responses. She receives, absorbs, and reflects. Not to agree, but to understand. Not to react, but to discern. Her listening is not passive, it's powerful. There's a patience in her silence that unsettles the impatient. People speak to her and they feel seen, not because she showers them with flattery, but because she gives them something rarer, her full attention. While others rehearse their replies, she leans into the moment. Her eyes don't dart around looking for escape. Her ears don't filter truth through ego. She listens with her whole presence, and that alone makes others feel disarmed. Because when she listens, she's not just collecting words, she's gathering truth. She listens to what's said, what's unsaid, and what's hiding between the lines. She's tuned into tone, body language, and timing. She doesn't need to be told twice. Once is enough. You can't lie comfortably around her because her silence exposes what your words try to bury. That's her gift. She doesn't argue often because most things fall apart under the pressure of her listening. She's not the type to dominate conversations with monologues or inflated opinions. Instead, she holds space. She observes. She reflects back clarity to people who didn't even know they were confused. While others speak to prove how much they know, she listens to learn what you know, and more importantly, who you are underneath it all. She is not impressed by noise. She's moved by depth. She speaks only when she means to move energy, shift perception, or offer something of value. There's no random chatter in her vocabulary. She doesn't talk just to fill silence because she respects silence as much as she respects sound. She knows that not every thought deserves to be vocalized, and not every opinion is worth defending. Her speech is measured not by volume, but by impact. Some misread her quiet as weakness. They assume her silence means she's unsure or disengaged, but what they fail to realize is that she's already 10 steps ahead in observation. While others are speaking from impulse, she's watching the room, tracking emotional undercurrents, and identifying patterns. She sees the motives people try to mask. She catches the inconsistencies most overlook, and when she finally speaks, every word lands. She doesn't speak to win, she speaks to wake. She doesn't speak to be the center. She speaks when truth needs an anchor. And because she listens deeply, her words have power. People remember what she says because she says little and leaves much. She can deliver clarity in one sentence that others can't provide in 1,000. That's not magic, it's mindfulness. She doesn't interrupt others to force her viewpoint. She lets people finish. And in doing so, she learns who they are in real time. She knows that people reveal themselves if you let them speak long enough. So she listens not only to understand, but also to witness, to watch who's speaking from truth and who's reciting a persona. She lets the room unfold without rushing it, because she doesn't need to control the tempo. She is the tempo. And when it comes to listening to herself, she is equally committed. She checks in with her own thoughts, her own body, her own signals. She doesn't silence her intuition to please the crowd. She listens inward first. She lets her spirit speak before her mouth ever does. That is why she can sit in discomfort without flinching, because she's made peace with her own silence. She doesn't run from stillness. She listens to it. This woman has realized that there's more strength in restraint than in reaction. She no longer needs to win every debate, insert her opinion everywhere, or match every energy thrown at her. She saves her voice for the moments it matters. She understands that power doesn't come from saying more. It comes from knowing when to say less. And when she speaks, people lean in, not because she demands attention, but because she's earned it. Her silence isn't emptiness, it's presence, it's awareness, it's depth. She doesn't need to speak to be seen. She doesn't need to shout to be heard, because in her stillness, in her gaze, in her groundedness, she is the message. And when she finally chooses to speak, she doesn't just use words. She uses wisdom. She trusts her inner world over outer noise, not because the world hasn't tried to convince her otherwise, but because she has learned the hard way that peace never shouts. It whispers. And it is in that whisper, that still quiet place within, that she hears the only voice that has never lied to her, her own. While others are busy polling the world for direction, she closes her eyes, takes a breath, and listens inward, because her truth doesn't come from outside approval. It comes from within her being, where no applause or opinion can touch. She wasn't always this way. There was a time when she too bent under the weight of everyone else's expectations, when she mistook popularity for purpose and noise for knowledge. She once walked through her life carrying the voices of others in her head, voices that told her how to act, how to think, how to be. But eventually, the cost became too high. She began to lose pieces of herself every time she tried to match the volume of the world. And so she began the sacred rebellion of going inward. Now, when confusion surrounds her, she does not chase answers from the outside. She retreats. She returns to herself. She asks better questions. She does not move because people tell her to. She moves when her spirit says, now. Her timing is not based on pressure. It's based on alignment. She no longer waits for consensus to feel confident. She has built her own compass, and she trusts it even when the whole world is pointing the other way. This trust in her inner world makes her look unshakable, but that's not because she always knows the way. It's because she no longer doubts her ability to find it. She is not immune to fear, but she doesn't let fear vote. She lets intuition lead, and her intuition is sharp, not because she was born with magic, but because she listens. She practices the art of hearing herself when the world is too loud to think. People often mistake her groundedness for aloofness. They don't understand how she can be so calm in chaos, so still in storms, but they don't see what she sees. That outer chaos is temporary, but inner clarity is eternal. She doesn't panic because she's not trying to control everything. She's focused on aligning herself with truth. And from that place, her steps are steady, her decisions are rooted, her presence is real. She has no need to chase trends, opinions, or validation. What's in today may be out tomorrow, but integrity never goes out of style. She has stopped asking the world to name her value. She knows what she's worth, and she's no longer available for discount conversations, environments, or relationships that try to shrink her spirit. She knows when something feels off. She trusts her discomfort as data. When something doesn't feel aligned, she doesn't explain it away. She honors it. Even in love, she no longer begs for reassurance. She knows the difference between butterflies and warning signs. She doesn't override red flags with excuses. She doesn't romanticize inconsistency or confuse potential with reality. Because she is listening to something deeper than chemistry. She is listening to the part of herself that has survived every heartbreak and learned to speak up before the damage begins. Her choices reflect her connection to herself. She doesn't dress for the room. She dresses for her expression. She doesn't speak to blend in. She speaks to be true. She is not performing. She is not seeking applause. She is showing up as herself, for herself. The way she moves, the way she pauses, the way she decides, all of it speaks of a woman who has tuned out the noise long enough to know what her own voice sounds like. When the world tells her to hurry, she slows down. When the world tells her to compare, she disconnects. When the world screams that she is not enough, she closes her eyes and remembers every time she rose from her own ashes. She doesn't need more noise, she needs more knowing. And she knows that the world will always have something to say, but that doesn't mean it's worth listening to. This kind of woman is dangerous not because she is loud, but because she is clear. She doesn't follow, she aligns, she doesn't beg, she attracts, she doesn't copy, she creates. And she creates from the inside out, not the outside in. Her life is not a reaction to the world. It is a reflection of her inner alignment. She moves like someone who has already found what most are still searching for, permission to be herself. And once a woman trusts her inner world more than the outer noise, there's nothing the world can do to unseat her, because she no longer needs direction. She is the direction. She is not afraid to walk alone because she has already met herself in the silence where most people get lost. While others run from solitude, she has learned to make a home within it. The quiet does not scare her, it strengthens her. She has learned that the path to becoming is not always crowded, not always affirmed, and not always accompanied. Sometimes it requires her to leave the noise behind, step off the well-traveled road, and walk a path that only her soul understands. She knows what it means to stand in a room full of people and feel unseen. She remembers what it feels like to pour love into spaces that never held her properly. And she remembers the ache of shrinking herself just to belong to a place that didn't deserve her light. But she outgrew that need. She outgrew the version of herself that needed to be surrounded to feel secure, because she realized if being around people costs you your peace, then loneliness is a form of freedom. She has walked away from places where she was tolerated, not celebrated. She has released relationships where she was constantly explaining her worth, defending her depth, or apologizing for her sensitivity. She no longer stays where she has to prove that she matters. And when she leaves, she doesn't slam the door. She simply stops knocking. She lets silence speak for her. Her absence becomes the loudest thing in the room. Alone doesn't mean lonely to her. It means full. It means uninterrupted. It means honest. She has made solitude a sanctuary, not a sentence. While others fill their time with noise to avoid their own thoughts, she sits with hers and listens. She listens to her longings, her wounds, her dreams, her questions. She knows that healing can't happen in distraction, so she creates space for clarity to find her. She's learned that not everyone is meant to go where she's going, that some people were only assigned to a chapter, not the whole story. And she doesn't beg anyone to stay who shows signs they want to leave. She understands that forcing a connection is a betrayal of her own energy. So she blesses people on their way out, not with bitterness, but with wisdom. She knows anything that requires her to abandon herself to keep it is not worth keeping. Walking alone has made her fierce, not in a hardened way, but in a holy way. She no longer seeks approval like oxygen. She doesn't bend her boundaries to fit someone else's comfort. She doesn't adjust her light to make others feel secure. Her walk is not for performance. It is for presence. And even when no one is clapping, she keeps going because she's not doing it for applause. She's doing it for alignment. The strength you see in her wasn't handed to her. It was carved from loss, from letting go, from late nights where she had to choose her growth over her grief. It was shaped by moments where she stood on shaking ground and decided not to fall. She has cried in bathrooms, healed in silence, and risen with no one watching. So now, when she walks alone, she doesn't feel empty. She feels powerful because she knows exactly who she had to become to walk this way. She is not afraid to be the only one in the room who sees it differently, feels it more deeply, or chooses another route. She doesn't follow crowds, she follows calling. She doesn't fear being misunderstood. She fears misunderstanding herself by conforming to what's expected. So she walks with conviction, even when the path is lonely, even when the nights are quiet, even when no one claps for her courage. The woman who walks alone is often the one who changes everything. She is not dependent on the echo of others to validate her voice. She is not waiting for companionship to start her journey. She is not postponing her becoming for the comfort of company. And though she welcomes connection, she does not depend on it, because she knows the difference between loneliness and alignment. And she chooses alignment, even if it means walking alone. There is a grace in her solitude, a power in her independence, a truth in her steps. She does not walk fast to catch up. She walks with rhythm, with intention, with soul. And anyone meant to walk beside her will not need to be chased. They will meet her where she already stands. She doesn't just survive the alone seasons. She evolves in them. She doesn't just pass time, she transforms in it. And when she finally opens her life to others, it is not from need, it is from wholeness. She is no longer searching for someone to complete her. She's already whole. Anyone who joins her now must come not to fill a void, but to share the view. She learns from pain without becoming it, because she knows that wounds are meant to teach, not define. Life has tried to harden her, to shape her into a version of herself that is bitter, closed, guarded, but she refused. She allowed herself to feel the hurt, to sit with the ache, to name the grief, but she did not let it become her identity. She wears her scars like lessons, not labels. Pain may have walked with her, but it never led her. She's been broken before, not just by others, but by her own expectations, her own hopes, her own tenderness offered to the wrong hands. She's had days where getting out of bed felt like a war. She's had nights where her tears didn't ask for permission, but in every storm she was gathering something: insight, strength, truth. Even in the darkest seasons, she wasn't just surviving, she was becoming. What separates her is that she never let the betrayal turn her into someone she wasn't. She never let disappointment teach her to stop hoping. She didn't let cruelty convince her to stop being kind. The world told her to toughen up, to stop feeling so deeply, to numb her sensitivity. But she knew her softness was not her weakness. It was her power, and she refused to let pain turn her into a reflection of those who caused it. She does not deny her pain. She faces it. She lets it speak, but she doesn't let it sit in the driver's seat. She gives it room to breathe, not to rule. She cries when she needs to. She falls apart when she must, but she rebuilds. She always rebuilds. And every time she does it with more wisdom, more clarity, more courage, because she doesn't just go through things, she grows through them. The pain taught her things peace never could. It taught her where she was overgiving, where she was over-explaining, where she was self-abandoning. It showed her who was real and who was just passing time in her life. It taught her the cost of ignoring her intuition. It taught her the necessity of boundaries. And most of all, it taught her that healing is not forgetting. It's remembering without reliving. She is no longer ashamed of her history. She has stopped hiding the parts of her story that once felt too heavy to speak aloud, because she realized the most painful parts were also the most powerful. The places she bled were the same places she now shines. Her cracks let the light in, but more than that, they let her light out. She is not broken. She is proof that beauty can rise from ruin. People see her strength and think she's untouched. But her strength didn't come from ease. It came from endurance. It came from being knocked down and getting back up without applause. It came from holding her own heart in the dark, whispering, "We're not done yet." That's how she learned to trust herself, not when life was soft, but when it was merciless. She no longer seeks to avoid pain at all costs. She understands it's part of the terrain. What she avoids now is repetition. She will not stay in patterns that mimic old wounds. She will not choose what triggers her traumas just to feel familiar. She's done calling dysfunction home. She's learned the difference between comfort and healing, and she chooses healing even when it's uncomfortable. There is a quiet fierceness in the way she forgives, not because it's easy, but because she knows carrying bitterness would only tie her to what tried to break her. Forgiveness, to her, is not about erasing accountability. It's about releasing herself. It's how she breaks the cycle. She lets go, not to forget what happened, but to reclaim who she is beyond it. She is a mosaic of every moment she thought she'd never survive. And still, she smiles. Not because it never hurt, but because she turned the pain into a portal. She used it to meet herself more fully, to deepen, to soften in the right places and fortify the rest. And now, her pain is not her shadow. It's her teacher, a wise one, a humbling one, but no longer a master over her life. So when she walks into a room with grace, it's not because life spared her, it's because she spared herself. When the world tried to make her hard, she stayed human. When it tried to silence her, she spoke truth. When it tried to break her, she became a woman who bends with purpose, but never stays broken. That's the kind of power you don't see until she speaks, until she loves, until she leaves light behind her. That's the kind of power born from pain, but no longer bound to it. She doesn't seek validation, she moves in conviction. Not because she has never longed for approval, but because she has tasted the emptiness of performing for it. She knows what it feels like to do everything right, say everything sweet, fit every mold, and still feel unseen. That kind of striving left her hollow, so she stopped searching for herself in other people's applause. She stopped looking for reflection in eyes that couldn't recognize her truth. Now, she moves because it is right, not because it is liked. There is a quiet revolution in the way she stands rooted in her decisions. She no longer polls the room before she speaks. She doesn't pause her dreams waiting for permission. She has heard enough opinions to understand that no one else can see the vision that was planted uniquely in her. She's not here to convince anyone. She's here to become someone herself, fully and unapologetically. And that kind of woman doesn't ask for seats at tables. She builds the room. She has learned that external validation is addictive. The more you chase it, the more you need it. And each time it dictates your worth, you hand over another piece of your soul. She got tired of being edited by expectations, tired of shrinking her voice to fit into spaces that didn't honor her truth, tired of living halfway, half bold, half afraid. She realized the price of approval was authenticity, and she was no longer willing to pay it. Now she makes choices based on alignment, not acceptance. She doesn't ask, will they like this? She asks, does this reflect who I am? Her decisions come from the gut, the spirit, the knowing deep inside that doesn't always make sense, but never leads her astray. She has learned to trust that voice, the one that whispers even when the crowd is loud, the one that stays when everyone else leaves, the one that knows her beyond her performance. She understands that conviction isn't about arrogance. It's about clarity. It's not about never questioning. It's about knowing where your questions end and your truth begins. She may listen, she may learn, she may evolve, but she will not waver from her core to be palatable. She doesn't dilute herself to avoid discomfort. She doesn't soften her truth to make others feel safe in their illusions. She is kind, but she is not compliant. She speaks with purpose, not popularity. She acts with intent, not attention. And when her voice shakes, she speaks anyway, not because she knows she'll be applauded, but because she knows she must. Because there's something inside her that burns brighter than fear, something that refuses to wait for consensus before it takes up space. This kind of conviction cannot be taught. It is earned through nights of doubt, through decisions no one clapped for, through standing alone when it would have been easier to follow. She has sat with herself in silence, questioned herself, rebuilt herself, and now when she moves, it's not random, it's rooted. It comes from a place deeper than visibility. It comes from vision. Even in relationships, she doesn't seek to be constantly affirmed. She doesn't fish for compliments, doesn't perform emotional cartwheels to be seen. She knows her value, and she knows that anyone who truly sees her won't need convincing. She would rather be alone in truth than loved in pretense. That is her power. She does not chase love. She radiates worth. She also no longer explains herself endlessly. She has realized that some people will misunderstand her no matter how gently she speaks or how clearly she explains, and that's okay. Her job is not to make others comfortable with her evolution. Her job is to keep evolving, even if that means walking paths others can't see, even if that means bearing criticism from those who never had the courage to create. She keeps going, not because they approve, but because she believes. There is a fire in a woman who no longer needs to be chosen to feel worthy, who no longer asks the world if she's allowed to take up space, who wakes up in her own skin and says, "This is enough, this is power, this is me." She doesn't rise to be noticed. She rises because she can no longer sit with the weight of her own potential unrealized. She doesn't move with the crowd. She moves with purpose. And though she walks softer now, more grounded, more present, more at peace, every step she takes carries the force of someone who knows. Validation fades, but conviction remains. The world may change its mind about her 100 times, but she will not, because she has chosen herself, and that's all the validation she'll ever need. She doesn't wear a crown you can see. She walks with one in her mind, And whether she speaks softly or roars loudly, you will feel her presence like a mirror, showing you what's possible when you choose to rise without waiting for the world to notice. Because being a highly intelligent woman isn't just a state of mind, it's a way of walking through fire and turning it into light. So if you see her, thank her. If you are her, protect her. And if you're becoming her, don't rush. Just keep walking. She's already within you.